Ave Maris Stella.
Hello and welcome back to Vatican II in a Year. This is your host, Father Matthew Schneider. I am a priest of the Church of Christ and a theology professor. This is a podcast on the StarQuest Production Network at sqpn.com. Today we're on day 315 and we're covering Gaudium et Spes 31. This paragraph is on the importance of higher levels of conscience. If you want to follow along, we have a reading plan and more details at sqpn.com/Vatican or frmatthewlc.com/Vatican. Yesterday we spoke about equal dignity means no discrimination or slavery, and we all need to contribute to the common good. Today we're going to continue chapter 2, the community of mankind. We're almost done. And we're going to talk about how we need people in education. We need to help people in education, poverty alleviation, and civic involvement. This paragraph 31 seems to be three subparagraphs that are not as united as some other subparagraphs are. So A is about needing to educate all on better culture and conscience. B is man needs to be aware of his dignity and not crippled by poverty. And C, we need to encourage aspects to get more people involved. So let's begin with 31A. In order for individual men to discharge with greater exactness the obligation of their conscience towards themselves and the various groups to which they belong, they must be carefully educated to a higher degree of culture, through the use of immense resources available today to the human race. Above all, the education of youth, from every social background, has to be undertaken so that there can be produced not only men and women of refined talents, but those great-souled persons who are so desperately required by our times. This is this asking of, in this subparagraph, of a higher culture, right? Ultimately, the higher culture we have, the highest culture is the faith in the church. And we have a conscious obligation to teach. We have so many resources today to teach. And the goal of this is ultimately to help them to become better persons, so then they can help transform society. Education isn't just, hey, I learned this, learned that, right? It needs to go beyond to virtue, to things like that. And the second thing here is looking about how we need to look at different social backgrounds. We need to educate all races. We need to educate in all languages. We shouldn't just educate the wealthy. There's many in the church who have dedicated to the education of the poor, the education of some downtrodden race or in some language that wasn't really educated in before. And what is their ultimate goal? What's the ultimate end of Catholic education? And the last phrase, whatever you want to say, the last line says, those great-souled persons who are so desperately required by our times. We are educating people in Catholic education to be great-souled people. Moving on to subparagraph B, it talks about how man needs to be aware of dignity and not crippled by poverty. B, now a man could scarcely arrive at the needed sense of responsibility unless his living conditions allow him to become conscious of his dignity and to rise to his destiny by spending himself for God and for others. But human freedom is often crippled when a man encounters extreme poverty. Just as it withers when he encounters when he indulges in too many of life's comforts and imprisons himself in a kind of splendid isolation. Freedom requires new strength by contrast when a man can sense the unavoidable requirements of social life, takes on the manifold demands of human partnership, and commits himself to the service of the human community. Here, we are noting that man needs to become aware of his dignity. Man and woman, obviously. I've noted before, they use just man here, but they mean men and woman many times in the council documents. And their dignity allows them to see God's destiny for them. But what obstacles are there? There's obstacles of poverty. There's obstacles of that's overindulgent, where you just overindulge in food or entertainment. You isolate yourself and you are unable to participate in the social life anymore. It's really dangerous to have these things because they really imprison you. You have so many people today who are imprisoned by the entertainment industry or imprisoned by poverty because they can't get a job and they struggle with those type of things. And ultimately, what are we looking for? We're looking for freedom to do what is good, freedom to work in these various social aspects, freedom to work in partnership with other humans, freedom to work in service to the community. And that is really what I think this unites this paragraph, this paragraph, even though these three subparagraphs are all different, is that idea of how we all need to get involved, how we all need to help with that, right? So we need to avoid these kind of things. We need to have education. And subparagraph C, which we'll read in just a second, explains this and brings this out more fully than A and B. And it's about encouraging aspects to get more people involved. C. Hence, the will to play one's role in common endeavors should be everywhere encouraged. Praise is due to those national procedures which allow the largest possible number of citizens to participate in public affairs with genuine freedom. Account must be taken, to be sure, of the actual conditions of each people and the decisiveness required by public authority. If every citizen is to feel inclined to take part in the activities of various groups which make up the social body, these must offer advantages which will attract members and dispose them to serve others. We can justly consider that the future of humanity lies in the hands of those who are strong enough to provide to the coming generations with reasons for living and hoping. This is very valuable, this subparagraph, because it really says, hey, we need to all be participating in society. One of the things that isn't talked about a ton, but is in Catholic teaching, the idea that authority is based in some way on the will of those who are governed. This is most obvious in a democracy, but this teaching does not require democracy. It can work in something like a benevolent monarchy or things like that, or a kind of aristocracy where the people all accept that. But what this is getting at is we all need to encourage them to be involved, right? We want to have the national procedures that allow the greatest possible number. We want things that allow many people to be involved. And it's really good that you have a lot of people involved, and it's good to promote this. Now, exact procedures differ. For example, I know when I voted in civic elections up in Canada, you would vote for mayor, alderman, and school board trustee, and that was it. I recently voted for the first time in the U.S. in civil elections here. I became a citizen during 2025 while I was recording this. And when I voted, I was kind of surprised how many different positions were open, whereas in Canada, a lot of those other positions would have been appointed by the elected officials based on merit and job applications and things like that. And both of those are fine. Or it's good to see peaceful protests. I know a lot of people I know sent pictures when it was life-changing in their various cities. I know, for example, not too long ago, I was driving by and there were two groups protesting on opposite sides of the street in front of like a little town hall. I don't know exactly what the issue was, but it was clear that one side was like very Republican, the other side was very Democratic, in the sense of the Democratic Party. And there were like 30 people on either side of the street protesting. I could tell by like the rainbow flags and the other kind of things. And they had a lot of slogans, but it wasn't clear what the overall issue was between the two. Anyways. And what they want is to encourage participation, not just in voting, but in actual action, whether it's doing a small protest like that, be involved in some kind of social group, be involved in some activist group that's pushing good things. It's great that people get Catholics involved in local pro-life groups, local anti-euthanasia groups, different things like that. And then ultimately need to provide reasons for living. This is something the church can do great, and this is something we all need to think of for the next generation. Ultimately, the full meaning for living is in God, but there are still good things to see and good things to talk about in this world to live for. That concludes today. Thank you for listening to this episode of Vatican II in a Year. This is a listener-supported podcast, and you can donate to help StarCrest produce it and other great podcasts at sqpn.com/give. You can give one-time, monthly, or join the StarCrest Patreon. Tomorrow, we will continue with the next paragraph of Gaudium Spes, paragraph 32, which will conclude chapter 2. And it is on God made us as social beings. Please join us then to learn more about Vatican II, which can provide a blueprint for the Catholic Church. If you want more information on the podcast, like playlists for individual documents and a reading plan, go to sqpn.com/Vatican, frmatthewlc.com/Vatican, or Vatican SQPN on Facebook and X.
Amen.